The history of golf is usually written in green jackets and silver jugs, but occasionally the script takes a dark, jagged turn that no one saw coming. From high-altitude tragedies to slow-motion neurological battles, these are 6 of the worst and most painful deaths in golf history. The most recent entry on this list is a stark reminder that the most painful injuries aren't always visible on an X-ray. In May 2024, two-time PGA Tour winner Grayson withdrew from the Charles Schwab Challenge, citing an illness. The next morning, the golf world stopped. His parents later confirmed he had died by suicide via carbon monoxide poisoning in his home. Murray had just won the Sony Open earlier that year and seemed to be turning his life around, proving that no matter how good your swing looks on Saturday, the back nine of the mind is a much harder course to navigate. Jarrod Lyle was the ultimate good bloke of the PGA Tour, known for his signature yellow bucket hat and a smile that could outshine a clubhouse trophy. But his life was defined by a brutal, recurring battle with acute myeloid leukemia that started when he was just 17. Lyle beat the disease twice, famously making an emotional return to the tour in 2013 after his second bout. But in 2017, the cancer returned for a third and final time. The physical toll was immense. By the end, a mystery illness had robbed him of his eyesight and hearing, and he was so weak, his goal was simply being able to spread jam on his toast. He finally chose to enter palliative care in 2018, passing away at just 36. It's a heartbreaking reminder that sometimes the toughest fighters are given the most unfair opponents. They called him Champagne Tony because he used to buy a round of bubbly for the press whenever he won. In 1964, he won the British Open at St. Andrews and was widely considered the biggest threat to the dominance of the era's greats. 2 years later, Lema, his wife, and 2 others were flying to an exhibition match in Illinois. The plane ran out of fuel and, in a twist of irony that feels too cruel to be true, crashed directly onto a golf course, specifically the 7th green of Lansing Sportsman's Club. He was only 32 years old. It's the kind of dark irony that makes you realize the universe has a very twisted sense of humor. While some deaths are sudden, Bobby Jones, the man who founded the Masters and won the Grand Slam, had to endure one of the slowest and most painful withdrawals in history. In 1948, Jones began feeling a strange pain and atrophy in his right side. He was eventually diagnosed with syringomyelia, a rare disease where fluid-filled cysts form within the spinal cord. For 23 years, the most graceful swinger in the game watched his body systematically shut down. By the end, he was confined to a wheelchair, unable to even turn the pages of a book. He died in 1971, having spent nearly a third of his life trapped in a body that refused to cooperate. This one is harder than most because it wasn't about a wrist or an ankle. It was about watching one of the most magnificent golfers who ever lived face something no one could coach him through. In October 2008, Seve collapsed at Madrid's Barajas airport. Tests confirmed a malignant brain tumor, leading to 4 separate operations, chemotherapy, and radiation. When he emerged, thin and pale, he called it the mulligan of my life. But the ground kept slipping away. He died in May 2011 at age 54, surrounded by family in the same village where he'd learned to play golf with a single 3-iron on the beach. If you wanted to design the most cinematic, terrifying way for a legend to go, you couldn't beat the tragedy of Payne Stewart. In June 1999, he was the king of the world, famously striking a victory pose after winning the US Open at Pinehurst. 4 months later, he was dead, in a way that sounds like a Hollywood thriller. Stewart was on a private jet when the plane suddenly lost cabin pressure. Within seconds, everyone on board was likely unconscious from hypoxia. The plane, now a ghost flight piloted by a dead crew, flew on autopilot for nearly 4 hours, traveling 1,500 miles across the country while Air Force fighter jets trailed it. It eventually ran out of fuel and slammed into a field in South Dakota. 1 minute you're the most stylish man in golf, the next you're on a 4-hour ride to nowhere. Hey, if you think these biological and mechanical disasters were unfair, wait until you see what happens when the rule book itself decides to get involved. Check out this video on the 5 most heartbreaking and controversial penalties in Masters history.